Hello, my name is Sarya. This is a series of videos where I go through what happens in the Earth that's playing on IQIYI right now, and also reading the book that it's based on to give you the details that happen in the book and to point out the differences that only happen in the show. Spoiler alert to anyone who hasn't watched the show and read the book and wants to, because we are on episode 2. A few things I forgot to mention last episode. One of them is that in the book they are the Nubanan tea plantation, but in the show they're the Nubanan wine farm. I also want to apologize for saying Mudang's name kind of wrong. I think it's because I keep thinking about that baby hippo, so I keep saying Mudang. That's wrong. That's not what I mean. It's Madang. Also, if you guys feel like episode 1 went really slowly, it's because episode 1 pretty much ends halfway through chapter 1. So yeah, it is moving kind of slow, which is why if you think it was kind of boring, and that's probably why. Anyways, so one thing that I noticed was that at the end of episode 1, Din and Rose have a cute flashback moment to where they're playing princesses and Din proposes to her as a kid, even though Kid Rose is like, oh, we're both women, princesses can't marry princesses, but she's like, says who, and flash forward and Din has like, you know, a dried rose from that memory pressed in one of the books that she's reading, right? That's how episode 1 ends. Tell me why episode 2 starts with Rose having a meal with Wasu and Wasapol. Like, surely hasn't this guy done enough stuff to make you feel like you should not trust anything he says? I will say that probably from Rose's perspective, it feels like not as easy to tell. But to us viewers, this show makes every opportunity to make these guys look so fucking shady. I don't know. It feels pretty obvious at this point. But I guess Rose is still trying to give the Mahatanakorns like the benefit of the doubt or something. But this scene actually happens in the book when Rose goes to see her dad in the hospital and it's just Wasu there waiting for her. I mentioned this in the previous video as well because this is one of the major like variations that they did in the show. And I do like this better because the way that Wasu talks is so like belligerent and arrogant and untrustworthy that his dad is there to balance him out. And when he starts accusing Din of being the one who wants to take advantage of Rose and probably the one behind Uncle Teep's accident, the dad is like, whoa, Wasu, chill, Jesus Christ, like, we shouldn't accuse people like that. Because when you accuse people like that, it's like really sus. And I also just guessed that Wasupal never taught his son that he probably needs to like at least be able to act like he's nice in order to get away with evil. And then what happens next is the funniest part of this episode. And obviously it's not a funny thing actually, but you know, after this dinner, he's like, oh, Rose, like come take a look at our wine vineyard or whatever, like come look around. And then he takes her around, he's like, oh, that's where the grapes are grown and stuff. And then there's this lady that comes out of nowhere being like, help, help, help. And then he's like, oh, that's just some crazy worker who we need to like make sure like, you know, doesn't like put herself in danger. And Rose is like, what the fuck was that? That doesn't happen in the book at all. I feel like that would be like way too ridiculous. And because in the book, Rose never goes to the vineyard to like take a look around, this whole next scene where Wasu's like, yeah, I had this wine like made in your name, like, will you drink it? And she's like, oh, sorry, I don't really like drinking wine. I'm allergic to alcohol. And he's like, yeah, but like you can still drink it, can't you? And he's like sort of emotionally manipulating her to drink wine. Like, Rose, girl, like, why do you think you can trust these people? And of course, this next part is also just a show-only occurrence when the farm people at the vineyard are like, hey, there's a fire, and then he's like, oh shit, and he goes to check on the fire, and Rose takes this opportunity to escape as if she's being kept there against her will, and Madang shows up being like, Rose, get in the car, and she escapes, and she's like, how did you know I was here? And Madang is like, oh, Din has this undercover cop watching over you, and he said that you had been gone for a really long time and that you were probably at Wasu's farm. And she's like, oh shit, why does she have an undercover cop following me? Are things really that serious? And Madang's like, I don't know, you should ask her. However, the undercover cop part is also in the book. The part that is not in the book is when Rose gets off the car after being saved by Madang and is like, I really need to talk to Din right now. Like, I don't know why things are getting so serious. Why does she need an undercover cop to watch over me? And Din is actually already on the Chomjan flower farm because she wanted to check how Rose was doing because she knew that she was just with Wasu. And then finally, Rose is like, I just saw the Mahatanakorns. They told me not to trust you. What's that about? And she's like, listen, you know, you should make your own decisions. I'm not going to tell you who to trust. That's something only you can decide, which is a good answer. And she's just like, okay, like, what are you not telling me? And Din finally is like, the Mahatanakorns are involved in like human trafficking and they want your land to secure a smuggling route to cross the border, which obviously is a very, very tense issue in reality right now. So I just want to be sensitive to that. But of course, this is just fiction. Anyways, that part is not in the book at all. What does happen in the book, however, is that Rose gets back from seeing Wasu at the hospital and she gets back to her farm and she sees Din there. And she's like, Din, what are you doing here? And Din's like, oh, I'm just here to check on you because I heard that you ran into Wasu at the hospital. And Rose is like, oh, yeah, I did. And Din's like, how was it? And she's like, it was fine. And Din's like, oh, cool. Well, I guess I'll get going. And Rose is like, did you just come all the way over here to ask me that? And Din's like, yeah. And Rose just like stares at her because she obviously wants to ask her all these questions, but she doesn't know how to quite start this conversation. So instead she's like, oh, Din, have you eaten yet? And Din's like, oh, no. And Rose is like, great, so you'll have dinner with me. There's something that I want to talk to you about. Din and Rose are sitting at the dinner table and Din is like, oh, so you've invited me here to have dinner with you, right? And Rose is like, yeah. And Din's like, why do I have the feeling that you invited me here just to watch you eat? And Rose is like, why do you say that? And then Din goes on to say, listen, I know you've been really stressed out about your father, but like you really got to take care of yourself because these are hard times and you're going to need as much strength as you can have. Also, not taking care of yourself is only going to make your dad worry about you. She says this because they are at the dinner table and I guess Din is eating, but also Rose is like so stressed out that she hasn't eaten anything. And at this, Rose finally blurts out. She's like, okay, Mahatanakorn or Watinwanit? And Din's like, huh? And Rose is like, I'm asking you, which family should the Amor-Njinda family trust? And Din's like, I don't know, I don't have the answer. Only you can decide that. And Rose is like, you're not gonna tell me to trust your family? Rose is like, because that's what the other guys said. They were like, you should definitely trust my family, not that family. Why is she saying she doesn't know? Is she saying that I shouldn't trust her family? And Din reiterates, listen, you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. Like, I'm not gonna tell you who to trust. You need to decide based on what you see and what you feel and what you think. And I'll respect whatever decision you make, just like I mentioned in the last part. And finally, at the end of this conversation, Rose is like, finally like, okay, I choose Watinwanit. And Din is like, great, awesome. And that's the end of chapter 1. And chapter 2 is called Kasama, gentle yet unyielding. One part that's in the show and not the books is Din somehow mysteriously knowing everything that Rose likes to eat and is constantly like being able to ask people to prepare her favorite foods. I don't even know how that would be possible. Y'all haven't like seen each other in 14 years. And maybe Rose had favorite foods when she was a 10-year-old child on the farm, but surely her tastes have changed. Also, I don't think Din would have been in charge of dealing with the food back then, so how would she know? These are probably just, I don't know, silly cute things that they decided to throw in. But yeah, I found myself wondering, like, how the fuck would she know what Rose likes? Like, they don't even know each other. So the next part of the episode is the same as the book. You know, the following morning, they go to the hospital together. They wish Uncle Teep good greetings and tidings and luck for a speedy recovery. They talk to him. There's some tender moments. And when they leave the hospital, Din makes Rose go to her farm first so that they can have food because Rose is struggling to eat. One part that is a big difference between the book and the show here is that Rose in the show already knows that Uncle Kassadit, which is Din's dad, has passed away years ago. Whereas in the book, it is in this scene where she's eating with Din and Din goes away to do some business work in the office that the housekeeper tells Rose that her dad has passed away years ago. So another part that happens in the book is it explains a little bit more why Din is called so weak and frail as a kid. Din was born prematurely and that's why she grew up so weak and frail, and that they named her Din, which means soil in Thai, because they hoped that it would make her grow up strong. But the part that she was born prematurely and was so small and had to be in an incubator for the first weeks of her life was not mentioned in the show. The next part where Wasu comes back to the Chomjam farm and like tries to like threaten Rose, that happens pretty much the same in the book as well. The only difference is like a few pieces of dialogue that I thought would be fun to share. So Wasu is there being like, why you trust Rose? Like, I told you shouldn't trust her. And then he's like, you should come with me. And he grabs her wrist and she's like, oh my God, let go of me. You're hurting me. And he like doesn't care. And Din's like, Wasu, can't you see that you're hurting her? And Wasu's like, oh my God, like why the fuck should I listen to you? You're like a pathetic weakling. And then Din says, well, if you don't understand human words, then there's no need to keep talking. And then she pulls out a gun. And Wasu's like, oh my God, I could laugh. How dare you threaten me with a gun? Do you even know how to shoot that thing? How dare you? I could laugh until my teeth fall out. And Din's like, why don't you fucking let go of her, Wasu? And then Wasu pulls out his own gun and he's like, well, Din, you're nothing but a pathetic mutt. You used to run away with your tail between your legs when we were kids. And now you think you can stand up to me? You wouldn't even have the guts to shoot a dog. You're just a weakling and pathetic like your father. And at this, Din shoots him almost at the feet, which is very much like what happened in the show. But the sentence I wanted to share was this. It's like after this, Din says, a dog stays in its place. I wouldn't just shoot one for no reason. But if there's someone who doesn't know their place, and if they don't understand human words, then I have to shoot. Which is basically being like, it doesn't seem like you understand human words. That must mean you're a dog, and you're a dog who doesn't know your place. Therefore, I would shoot you. It's not that I don't have the guts to shoot a dog, it's that I'll only shoot a dog who's bad, which is you. I don't know. I thought that was funny. And then Wasu's like, anyone who becomes my enemy doesn't meet a good end. And Din's like, oh, don't worry, Wasu, because you know, that was just a warning shot. Because if I had really meant to shoot, you wouldn't still be standing there asking who the first corpse would be. At some point of episode 2, chapter 3 starts, and chapter 3 is called A Cherished Diamond to the Wathain Wanit. Another part that only comes up in the book is the same flashback where Din is with her dad and she's like a kid and he's like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't you tell me people are bullying you? And kid Din is like, I just didn't want you to worry. And then they like talk about how, you know, Din shouldn't let herself be bullied and she has to like grow up to be stronger, but also there's other ways to deal with bullies, not just strength. You can also just outsmart them. And Din is like, oh yeah, Wasu fails all his exams. So it's confirmed that Wasu's like a stupid idiot. And it's also brought up that Wasu never bullied Rose because he always thought that one day Rose would be his bride. So of course then later on Rose and Modang move into the Sanamak farm to be under Din's protection so Wasu doesn't do stupid shit to them. And there's that scene where Din brings a reed diffuser into Rose's room. That part in the show where she then brings her like a blanket and an air purifier and a snack, that's not in the book at all. Only the reed diffuser is though. Very specifically, just the reed diffuser is from the book. I would like to also point out that the way that Apple Lapisara is playing Din is so precious. Like, she is making Din such a softy, gay, panicky teddy bear that is so cute. And I think it's a nice added touch to the character that's in the book because she's not nearly as sweet as she is in the book. She's not nearly as cutesy in the book, and I think they're trying to actually make her like really like tough, but I actually like this version of her better. I also like how in the book it delves into more of Rose's internal thought processes about her feelings for Din because every time Din does something really thoughtful and meticulously caring, Rose is like, doesn't she know that she's making my heart waver? Which you don't really see as much in the show because it does feel like from the very beginning Rose has some heart eyes for Din. Even though she was saying that she really didn't know who she could trust until very recently, even though the show makes it so obvious. Anyways, that's all we have for episode 2. There really isn't that many differences in this bit, so yeah. But I will have episode 3 up very soon, and thank you so much for watching. Please like, follow if you want to see the next part. Here is my Buy Me a Coffee link and my Venmo if you feel so inclined, and as always, I'll see you guys very soon.